The Velocity Lab has been set up so that you are asked to write a short paragraph describing and discussing what occurred during the lab. This will be good practice for both explaining in detail while also being concise, meaning getting to the point. So for the Velocity Lab, there are essentially 3 requirements. On the Word document that you print to OneNote, you'll of course have your name. You'll say Velocity Lab up top. You will have your data table, right, which will have all of the trials, including the averages. Then you'll have your table, or sorry, your graph rather, which will be just the averages. Remember, you need a title, and a title. This should be very detailed. They should not only have a title, but units, and same thing for right here. Then will be your paragraph, which is what we're going to talk about up here. When you submit this, you want to submit it last name _ Velocity Lab 1 or 2, depending on whether it's your first draft or your final draft. Okay? Remember, points might get taken off if you do not follow that setup. So, to talk about the discussion paragraph itself, it is kind of divided up into 4 different sections. There's the intro, the results, the discussion, and then the future experimentation. So in the introduction, your job is to just kind of answer, what did you do, right? You are not going through and writing a whole methodology or writing a procedure, but you're just kind of saying what we did and why we were doing it. So I've got an example for you right here that I've pared down to 1 sentence. Usually, it's somewhere in the range of 1 to 2 sentences, right? So in the Velocity Lab, students were tasked with finding the velocity of a cart as it was released from 40, 70, and 100 centimeters. The ramp was set up 45 centimeters off the ground, and the cart was released down the track by the power of gravity, or under the power of gravity, something like that. Basically, what we did and how was it set up, right? Answering those 2 questions in approximately 2 sentences. The results will also be about 2 sentences. We want to find, or we want to say, what the general findings were, which is right here. The results demonstrate that as the car is released from a higher point, the velocity increases. You should probably find a different way to say that. Don't exactly copy me. But what you're saying is basically the car went faster when it was released from higher up. Then you can use this word for word if you want to, this format, right? Now, obviously, we're not going to talk about momentum. You're not going to talk about this. That was copied from a later lab. But you are going to talk about the 3 different release points and the velocity of the cart, right? So this respectively here means that this blank here for, like 1.4 meters per second corresponds to this first piece of data. This second one corresponds to this second one. And this third one here corresponds to this third one there. That's what respectively means. So we say what? We say how is it set up? You say general findings, which is this sentence. Then you say specific data. And in doing so, you're referring to the 3 averages. So those 4 sentences should be pretty easy to do. Then comes the discussion section. That's where we need to talk first about why did this happen, right? Why did we see this specific data? And the reason why is because of the series of events, right? By changing the release point or the height, we are therefore allowing for a greater distance of track. With a greater distance of track, then the cart has more time to accelerate, and it's accelerating because of gravity, which therefore means that the velocity of the cart gets higher. That should be approximately 2 sentences. Another maybe 2 sentences or so should be, what are the 2 things that slow the car down, And how do we reduce those two things? Essentially, why does the car not go even faster? Why doesn't car go even faster? Meaning, what keeps that cart from hitting its top speed? When we're talking about errors, we're not just talking about human errors, right? We do not want to talk about mistakes necessarily that were made, but what could be different group to group with the materials that you have that is inherent to either the materials or the setup of the lab. What could be different one group to the next? I'm thinking that the cart might roll differently. One car might be better lubricated than another car. One car might have a bum wheel that doesn't work. Things like that are going to mess up the data from group to group and cause slight variations. So we're not talking about human mistakes there. The last part is future experimentation. Future experimentation is where you answer the question, what can we do next? So your job here is not to come up with a whole new experiment where we're doing something completely differently. You're still using the track, you're still using the cart, you're still measuring velocity. So it should still have the track, it should still have the cart, it should still have velocity, which is your dependent variable. But what is different is the independent variable should change. So rather than the height of the ramp, rather than the release point being 40, 70, 100, what other thing can we test instead of release point? So it used to be release point, and we want to come up with something different, something new to test, not release point. We will still be using the track, we will still be using the cart, we will still be measuring velocity, but we're going to be manipulating a different independent variable. So this lab should be relatively simple if you follow these steps. Have your name, have the title, have a data table that has all the trials, including the averages, have a graph that just shows the 3 averages. Then your paragraph. In your paragraph, you have an introduction, 2 sentences to say what we did and how the lab was set up. Then a results part of that paragraph, where again, 2 sentences, general findings and then specific data. In your discussion section, which is about 5 sentences or so, you've got 2 sentences to talk about why the data occurred the way it did, meaning refer to that series of events. A couple sentences to talk about why the car didn't go even faster, what kept it from hitting its terminal velocity, and then another sentence or 2 talking about human mistakes, not human mistakes, but errors in general that are tied directly to the materials that you received or the procedure of the lab. And finally, a sentence or 2 talking about what can we test next while still using the track, still using the cart, and still measuring velocity. What different independent variable can we come up with? Remember to submit it, last name _ velocity lab 1, and then last name _ velocity lab 2 for your final draft.